Commission is Tuesday, January 5th, 2021. I appreciate everybody being here tonight. Thanks for all the committee members, and Happy New Year to everybody. It's our first meeting in the new year, 2021. First item we have is any announcements and citizen comments. What I'd like to do at this point is I would like to introduce B.J. Little with Turley and Associates. He will be able to give us kind of an overview of what we're going to come up to when we get into the public hearing. So B.J., I'm going to turn that over to you and let you carry it from there.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. I'm with Turley Associates. We're the engineers and surveyors that are representing the developer on this project. I brought a map tonight. It's over here on the wall, and then I also have two more exhibits that are up here kind of on the counter. I wanted to talk for a minute to make sure that everyone understood exactly what it is we're proposing. The city, or Morgan Smart Resort, they don't have specific a difference in their commercial zoning. That it's only called out as commercial, and it kind of just overlaps everything. So our intent on the map that's on the wall over here, there's a little pink area that's shaded in, and that's 3.4 acres. Our intent for this is that we're going to build 1 to possibly 2 buildings that are going to be of the professional nature of a attorney's office, a dentist's office, and we have some prints up here of what's been built already in Temple that Mr. Keela has already built previously. There is absolutely no restaurants, no bars, nothing that is going to be open after 5 o'clock. That can't happen there. And even alcohol sales, if everyone's not familiar with it, to obtain a alcohol license to sell alcohol on a premise, you have to get an additional permit to the city, and then you have to apply through the Texas Alcohol Board to get that. We have absolutely no plans for that. This is going to be just a business office for attorneys or dentists or something of a professional nature. And Mr. Keela said that he was absolutely fine with putting that in the conditions that this commercial tract cannot have anything related to a restaurant or related to alcohol sales or anything of that nature within it. You can put that within the conditions, so that way it protects everyone, and we can't ever come back in the future and say, well, we're zoned for commercial and it allows restaurants, so we're going to go in and do that. So that's the intent for that commercial section. The rest of it is all going to be single-family homes. It's going to be the exact same style of homes that's already currently in the Rancho Del Lago neighborhood. These are going to be $400,000 to $500,000 homes. All of the lots are 0.6, if not a little bit larger. The developer learned that on a half-acre lot, you can't really put a pool in, so every lot's going to be larger than a half-acre because the intent is that they're going to be large homes with pools in the backyard. So the whole development is planned to be very high-end and upscale neighborhood. This is going to be where he has his highest priced homes out of all of his neighborhoods that he's building. We just went through all of the annexation process for this whole property, and now we're trying to go through and get the zoning done. And so I have no problem if there is any neighbors or anyone within the community that has questions. I will answer questions after the meeting, or I'll give you my business card. You're welcome to call me. We try to be good neighbors. We're not trying to bring anything in that's going to hurt the neighborhood or hurt the Morgan Smart Resort. Okay?
Okay.
Can I just ask him a quick question? Is this slot, is that pink little corner, is that in addition to the commercial property that was annexed last meeting?
That is the property that was annexed.
That's a
Yes.
total property?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, BJ. Appreciate it. Okay, at this point, what we'll do is we'll open up the public hearing. I've got 6:04 on my clock.
And you're going to do citizen comments during the
I'm
public
sorry.
hearing.
Yeah, you're right, Jim. Thanks. I appreciate that. Let me back up just a little. We call our meeting to order, and now we have any announcements and citizen comments that would like to be interjected at this point. Yes.
Thank you, gentlemen, for letting us speak here tonight. Ladies, thank you guys. My name is Jason Miller, real estate agent and businessman. JB, thank you for that. I appreciate it. A quick question. When you guys were looking at the zoning of this, I know one of the problems that you guys have is actually the topography of the land because of where the water's running through. Is that why you're proposing the things to do with commercial?
That is one of the reasons. There's a separate the professional, the business part to the residential. There is a huge swell that runs through there. So trying to run a road over or put some sort of home into there just made it where it was near impossible. So, and that's the other reason why we're only going to put maybe one, if not two buildings, because the topography just doesn't lend itself to build a whole business park with it.
Right. So with the business park, I guess in similar nature to the ones you guys have, which are here, or possibly the one that's just up over here with the new water tower being built, something along those lines.
The one over by the water tower, that was done by a different developer, and that's more of like a strip mall with separate. This is going to be more of a single unit that an attorney or a financial advisor. The ones that are up here, I asked that y'all look at those before you leave. Those are, it's one office, and there's a financial advisor that works out of that entire office. So, you know, that's the same type of office that's going to be built there. I think possibly it could be a two-door, two-tenant, but that's it. It's not going to be a strip center. It's not going to be a strip mall.
Right. Is there any plan that you know of to leave it as open in nature as possible with like the trees and things like that that are there, or do you think there's a possibility of just getting them down?
Well, they're not going to take out any more of the oak trees. I mean, they went through and they cleared everything out. There was a lot of oak wilt and dead oaks that were within there. There was a lot of cedar that they removed. Obviously, trees sell homes. Everybody wants an oak tree within their lot, so they're not going to put any more pavement on the ground than they have to because that costs money. So they're going to build a building. They're going to build the minimum amount of parking that's required for that, and then everything else around will stay left green with the trees and natural. I mean, and we're not going to butt everything right up to the homes that are behind it. It's going to be put as centered as we can and as far south as we can get away from the current Rancho Del Lago homes.
So with that being said, do you know roughly which direction the traffic would flow? Would it be closer to the Morgan Point City side or more to the New Home?
I could say for sure because we're going to site plan territory.
So my only concern from a zoning standpoint, I understand it from a physical location standpoint, it makes sense. I would probably think to do the same thing. My only thought on it, obviously you've got, about 14 homes that will be affected total being butted up against the commercial property. So their values will be affected, which will ultimately affect everybody else's to some degree. But even beyond that, the other downside is that Morgan's Point is like a cul-de-sac development. Nobody really comes here to this point for any destination purposes. It's really more just, neighborly development, that kind of stuff. We do have a few restaurants and things that are here. So from a professional standpoint, I know that there's been other real estate agencies that have tried to put an office here. Two Lakes Blake just put an office in at that location, which has been multiple different spots right there on the corner next to Backyard Barbecue. Used to be a hair salon, I think it was. So that's my only concern. If we put a commercial piece of property right there, is it really going to end up getting used, or is it really more just going to turn vacant and be more similar to the strip mall that we currently have that the Mexican restaurant is occupying currently? That hasn't been rented out for quite some time. CC's is another example that hasn't been rented. So I would certainly say it's not for a lack of commercial property. My question would be, is there anything else we could do with the property? Possibly a public park. I know the downside is you're next to a pretty fast-moving lane, so we have to figure out what that would look like. Or even just a natural area where we leave that particular section open, buy it out to Morgan's Point, and then everybody gets to benefit from it. Because I just don't think professionally it's going to draw in that much need.
I agree. So, hi, I'm Nicole. I live on one of the properties that this commercial property would potentially back up into, and I'm not happy about it because when we moved out to Morgan's Point, specifically speaking, we're searching for an area that was outside of town that did not have a lot of commercial property out here. And I already see a lot of commercial property vacant, and I don't really see a need for another commercial area, especially right behind my house in Morgan's Point. There's a 3.2 or even maybe the same exact size acre plot of commercial property that is on the other side of our neighborhood that has been for sale for as long as we've been here. It's not being bought, it's not being developed. I would suggest that Mr. Keela look at that property for his offices. My other concern is that what is to prevent this commercial property, if there are only going to be a few offices on it, what's to prevent it from being sold in the future? It's already commercial and there's no differentiation between commercial zoning in Morgan's Point. What's going to prevent somebody else from coming in and paying Mr. Tequila however much money for that property and then putting in a strip mall right behind their houses. I don't really think it is an appropriate development between neighborhoods that have $500,000 homes in them. It does not seem like an appropriate location at all. Anyone else?
Okay, just on the same point, I mean, we're directly behind it. I mean, we're gonna be looking at it, and you talk about, all these homes are gonna have pools. I'm not gonna put in a pool in my backyard, with people from 8 to 5 driving up, and, you know, my kids are back there swimming and stuff. It's not gonna happen. So when you talk about, you know, having these upscale homes, that's what we originally moved here for. It's away from downtown, it's close enough for shopping, and instead, you guys are thinking about bringing in, you know, the shopping to us potentially. So I just don't, I'm definitely not happy about it, and I think that there's a lot of other places they could find a go.
And the fact that it's not usable, or supposedly not usable for homes, that's, you know, I'm sorry about that situation, but that's not our problem. The fact that it's not usable for homes, let's build a park there. Why isn't there an HOA area there? Then the homes that are in the rest of the neighborhood can potentially filter some HOA funds into that park. That I would be fine with a park behind my house, but I'm not fine with people driving in and parking their cars and then having an empty parking lot, which may be used after hours for, you know, some shenanigans going on. You know how little teenagers like to get into shenanigans, and then here's an empty parking lot behind my house where it's free for them to do it. And I think there's better uses for it. I know that those uses may not make money from Mr. Tequila, but again, that's not really what I'm concerned about.
I appreciate all the comments. I need to remind everyone that you're limited to 3 minutes, and you do need to make your comments from the podium so that the Planning and Zoning Commission can hear you.
Sorry.
So, not a problem at all. I'm just saying, as kind of we pause, if you would like to address, would you please come to the podium so that the Planning and Zoning Commission can see you and can hear you? Yes.
And please state your name and come up to the board.
My name is Mary Christina Gorick. I live at 119 Lane here in Morgan's Point. I would have a question, because I don't fully understand the taxing here in Morgan's Point along with Bill County and everything. With the increase of having these high-end homes just about a mile away from my house, I just wondered what that might do down the road to our property taxes that we're paying. If that has been looked at, if that will have an effect on the assessment of the area, because for every year for the last 3 years, I've had to go down and argue with the tax assessor about the evaluation of the property. And I just wondered what this might do, if that had been looked into, and if that might be a possible effect for all of us who currently live in the neighborhood.
Thank you.
I can address that if you like. Typically, I mean, there's any number of consequences that can happen to that. Certainly, as land develops, it can impact adjacent land values, and it depends upon the quality of the development. And typically, if it would depend on the value of your home as compared to the value of adjacent properties being developed. So that's one way of looking at it. The other way of looking at it is it expands the tax base of the city, which means that more people are paying taxes, which typically has a suppressive impact on your tax rate. Not guaranteed, but if more people are paying into the system, you're spreading the cost of running the city by more people. So there's going to be X number of homes at a different valuation, so there's going to be more valuation in the city. So it should have, all other things being equal, have the impact of lowering taxes. But at the same time, you're going to have an impact depending upon what your location of your house is relative to the other houses.
Yes, sir.
Good evening, my name is Alex Weaver. My wife and I live at 24 Cedro Circle that backs a ranch of Lago and backs up the new property. Our interest and concern is drainage. So we would ask that the rezoning be contingent on a submitted accepted surface water drainage plan that effectively receives the output from the spillway to be able to live next door to feeds into the new property. There's problems in Rancho Lago now with drainage. The current solution is, if it's not, for this one, it's not effective, and there's water exiting the subdivision, and it doesn't go anywhere. So we think a drainage plan that carries the water from the spillway all the way to the lake, given the owners of the property, would be, that should guide the zone.
My name is Sharon Smitherman, I'm at 14 Tejas Lane, and the drainage is also a concern of mine because all that water is eating away my property that's coming down, going to the lake. And what I used to have was a very narrow ravine there, keeps on getting steeper, I keep on losing trees. The flooding keeps coming up further on my property, but because my property is that corner property that's back there, it goes down the ravine, up the other side behind the condo request from last time. So all of this water, even from the new subdivisions and your area, I would like to find a place for that to go besides across my property and taking away part of my land. That I need a drainage issue there, and I'm really concerned about it because Temple did not do a very good job before. Now we're involved in it, and I just want my property protected. I don't want to sell that little piece of property to the city because I really like it, but I really like it solved.
Okay, thank you. Other comments? Anybody else, Jim, on the list there?
There are a number of people signed in, but if, without calling them out, if you just would make the last call for public comment.
We'll just have a last call for any public comments or announcements.
Can I just make a comment?
Sure.
I just wanted to, I'm Donna Hartman, I just wanted to address a couple of the concerns you had as far as vacant buildings. Our understanding is CC's, it's not for rent, it's been purchased. And the gentleman, he hasn't approached the city yet, nothing's formal. He talked about maybe putting some daycares in there, but so that is not really available. Also, the West Point grocery store, our understanding is that has been sold, and the roofing company has purchased that. So we don't know whether they're going to tear it down and use it to expand their space. None of that has been platted yet or turned into the city, but I just wanted to assure you there's a couple commercial properties sitting there that really will be eventually developed. Also, as far as the drainage issue, once this land, once they have the zoning requirements or whatever, they have already submitted plats on this property, and these plats are detailed drawings with drainage and engineering studies, and it's a full plat that is at City Hall right now. Our utilities director has reviewed it and has a few suggestions, and we will also have an engineer look at this plat map too. So this isn't the final stage as far as drainage issues, but they will be required, and they already have done this, to submit plats with drawing and field notes and engineering studies. So that's part of the subdivision ordinance that they're required, so that will be done. So anyway, those were just a couple things you brought up I thought I might be able to help you with.
Okay, thank you, Donna. Any others? Okay, thank you. All right, we'll open up the public hearing. My watch says 6:19. And this is for the A0505B H Catton, 3.422 acres, commercial and residential. And the A0531BC CW Lindsay, 94.934, single family zoning. Our item number 1 is to discuss and take appropriate action for zoning of the above mentioned properties. So I'll kind of open that up to the committee.
If I could, Mr. Hobbs, in the public hearing, you won't be taking any action. You'll just be giving the public an opportunity to provide further comment. Then after you close your public hearing, you'll go into action item number 1.
Thank you. All right, so we have that open right now, so if you have any other comments other than what we've already recorded on the citizens' comments on the zoning itself. properties from agricultural to single family on the 94.934 acres, and then to also change the agricultural to commercial and residential on the 3.422 acres. Comments, concerns?
Actually, I have a question.
Sure.
Can I ask you? When you talked about the commercial residential, are you going to develop it? Are you going to build a building there?
Yes, the developer will be the one, he won't build a building until he has a tenant. When he has a tenant approach him, he will build that building and have a tenant in place for them to go in.
So, and you might not know, but would that be the same situation as on the corner, kind of across from where the big bar, across from where there's now a real estate agent used to be a beauty salon? Is that the same situation there? Does anybody know whether that land is for sale, right? This little corner lot?
I don't know that,
That he built something if he has a tenant? Or,
typically what happens in these situations is someone either acquires a building and seeks a tenant, which was the case on that corner. That building has been there for decades.
oh, no, the empty lot.
But
The
I'm
one that was
saying,
made was before.
some people buy property to build a speculative building, hoping someone will come.
Yeah,
What Mr. Keela is suggesting is that he is going to build to suit. So he's not going to build a building until someone approaches him and says, I want to put my law office here, I want to put my dentist office, and then they will design the building together. He will build it knowing who is going into it before he breaks ground.
And if I may, just to answer your question, that little farm property you're referring to is owned by Carruthers.
yeah.
That property is actually for sale, so anybody with commercial intent could buy that property, build whatever they wanted to at that point in time. It
But
could
that's
be a
not the
restaurant.
situation for
Could be
you,
something.
if I understand it correctly. You are going to build.
Yes,
You're
yes,
going to
we will
build.
build.
Whereas Carruthers, they're not going to build, they just sell the land.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, so we hold a lot more control over what goes on that lot versus what Brothers, and that commercial property that's zoned there right now, I don't know, and I haven't read through how it was passed,
Yeah.
but there's no stipulations on that on this one, because the stipulations only allow the professional owners.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any others, Michael, Nathan? Comments at this point? Okay. Then, that being the case, then we'll need a motion to change the zoning from agricultural to single family on the 94 acres, and then from agricultural to commercial and residential, from agricultural to commercial and residential. Now, Jim, at this particular point, would we want to put any stipulations here, or do we just want to take both of them as is?
It's actually at the pleasure of the Planning and Zoning Commission. And so the proper action, if you're asking for my opinion, would be what is the pleasure of the Planning and Zoning Commission? And then one of the Planning and Zoning Commissioners would make a motion. And they would either make a motion to approve, deny, modify, put stipulations on, whatever the person who makes the motion intends their motion to be.
I have another comment actually
Okay.
about the residential. I think the positive thing is, taxes, otherwise you go somewhere else, we don't get taxes, and we still have to give you water, which is the problem. But to me, the water is the problem, and when you talked about these people putting in swimming pools, the water becomes an even bigger problem for Morgan's Point. I just want to kind of throw it out there. I guess we can we stipulate no swimming pools, but then of course you cannot sell the high-end homes because people want a swimming pool. It's kind of like a catch-22. How could that water be addressed?
If I may, so whenever those home builders apply for those permits, they have to bring in a package that shows the entire thing. So at that time, if the water is still an issue, the permit can be approved without the pool, but it gives them the ability in the future, when the water has been addressed, that they can come back and have the pool ready to use.
So if we zone it residential, we don't automatically allow 50 pools to go in.
No, when you're zoning it
Just
for its
residential,
use.
yeah.
You're not zoning it for, you're not issuing permits for any construction. Each individual property owner will have to come, apply for the proper permits. We have to assure that there's water and infrastructure to, in place at the time.
And I guess we could, as it develops, as the water issue develops, we could see the city somehow for the whole area make some sort of a water plan or whatever.
We're in the process of working with council on a long-term water plan. I mean, regardless of this subdivision coming or not, the city has an issue with water that we've been talking about, and we'll be talking about next week.
I was going to say, I saw it on the agenda for next week's city council meeting. Okay. So I think we all understand we're kind of at a certain stage here, and this stage is to just take this piece of property from agricultural zoning to single-family zoning and agricultural zoning to commercial and residential. And the rest of the steps will happen, like what BJ indicated, as the plats come up, as the drainage issues come up. Each of those will be addressed again at planning and zoning committee meetings as well as city council meetings. So we don't jump forward quickly. It's nice step by step to get everybody in agreement or not, and then we make modifications where it's necessary to do so.
I make a motion that we rezone at least to the single family. I don't know, maybe we should talk more a little bit about commercial, but single, I would make a motion that we rezone the single family.
So you're wanting to split it into
I thought you could do it easier.
No, you do it, it's whatever your pleasure. You can do it as one motion, or you can separate it.
Right.
Let's separate it into two and then we do the other one right after.
Okay. All right, so your motion, Andrea, I'm hearing is to approve to move forward to city council, the rezoning from agricultural to single family on the 94.932 acres. Any other discussion of that, guys, or? Not, I ever have a second? All right, thanks. All in favor? Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. All right, so the other piece, which is the 3.422 acres, comments, concerns, modifications.
Suggestion? I would suggest that we put in some stipulations to really, clarify in writing what you said, that only, that certain things will not happen there maybe. No, things, restaurant, alcohol sales. I guess it's pretty more in some sort of fee restriction or something, couldn't it?
If you put it in the form of a motion, it'll be a part of the record.
So that if it's sold, that the neighbors don't have to be concerned or somebody else buys it and.
I would not tell you how to make your motion at all. It is your
No, I
motion to
just
make. But you could say something like, I make a motion, I move that we rezone from agriculture to residential commercial with the stipulation that it not be allowed for restaurant or alcohol sales without them having to come back to the planning and zoning commission for a rezone. And if that motion passes, then that is the stipulation on that action.
Well, I personally need, I don't mind the restaurant, it's more if you have a noise ordinance and the noise ordinance is enforced, the restaurant can be quiet too. You know, alcohol sale doesn't necessarily be noisy and people running around drunk just because they buy a six-pack of beer. So, I'm not quite sure how we would.
I would suggest, going along with what Mr. Little suggested, is professional offices only,
Yeah.
and leave it at that.
Is that, BJ, is that broad enough to be able to cover what y'all may be considering?
Yeah, we're completely fine with that.
Okay.
I make a motion. That we rezone it as commercial for professional
Officers?
offices only.
Okay. Any other comments about that, concerns?
The only other thing, I understand the address down the road and concern about the adjacent property being impacted by erosion. I wouldn't have ruled as much as possible, which is wrong.
residential in case we came back and, like they were saying, if it never sold and we wanted to come back and put residential, I want to make sure that we could do professional offices and residential,
Yeah.
not just professional offices.
And,
Okay.
So I got a motion from you as it relates to professional offices / residential. That work?
Yes.
Is that, yes, sir?
Is it single-family residences?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so it would be
Well, okay,
single-family?
let's put that in.
Yeah.
We'll put that in then as professional offices / single-family residential. Okay, that's covered.
And you have a motion, you do not have a second.
Right, I have a motion,
second.
second from Michael, thank you. All in favor with aye?
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Okay, that takes our zoning out, and we'll go to item 2, which is the approval of the minutes for December the 1st, 2020. I'll let y'all take a look if you haven't already, and I'll entertain a motion for approval.
I make a motion to approve the minutes as indicated.
Thank you, Michael. I got a motion, I have a second. Brett, thank you. Second, all in favor? Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Okay. Item number 3 is new business, and it's our discussion and review ordinance on accessory buildings. Jim, I know last time you were going to kind of pick up some information for us, kind of see what others are doing, and see if we might make appropriate modifications to the ordinances.
I have some information for you and a recommendation tonight. And before I go any further, I will tell you that we had a very productive meeting with the prime candidate for your next city manager, who is sitting to my left, Mr. Dalton Rice.
Great to have you here, thank you.
And Dalton has some great ideas about how this ordinance could be structured. So you will not be seeing a formal recommendation tonight on an ordinance, but you will be having a discussion based upon our conversation last time. As you may be aware, the reason for this conversation was that the current ordinance limits accessory buildings to 2% of the square footage of the lot.
Right.
And that was done for a variety of reasons. In our historical review, it's mostly was due to people wanting to maintain the quality of life, limit the amount of green space that was being gobbled up by, large workshops and RV storage areas, to maintain the character of development in the city, and also from a drainage point of view, to limit the amount of impervious cover that was being put in, because the more slab structures we would have as accessory buildings, the less impervious cover, so the more drainage issues you have. And so the current ordinance limits you to 2%. 2% is kind of a number that somebody put on the ordinance back when it was done, and we had discussions amongst ourselves with numbers as high as 20%. And so I started looking at it from 2 different points of view, and I just offer this up for your comment and then some guidance so that Dalton and I know which direction you want us to go. Number 1, you can go scientifically, which is going to beat your staff and your citizens to death, quite frankly, because every house is different, every lot is different. We would have to compute square footages, we'd have to compute overhangs, we'd have to compute driveways, and I just think at the end of the day, the citizens are going to just go crazy every time they want to put in an accessory building because we'll over-regulate them to death. So I'm not recommending that you go a scientific route. I'm recommending that you go with a number as a screening threshold, which is what the 2% effectively does right now. So then the next question is 2% enough or is it too much? So I wanted to give you some reference. I did a quick survey of the average lots in Morgan's Point, and I picked 2 sample sizes. One is a half-acre lot, because that's the minimum lot size, and the other is a full-acre lot. Average home size on a half-acre lot is 1,500 square feet. Average house on a 1 acre is around 2,000 square feet. When you add up everything, you start to have some must-dos on each lot. So you have the house, you have a septic tank and a septic field, which must remain impervious. You have the driveway, you have the required setbacks and green space easements. So on a half-acre lot, just with those, before you do any accessory buildings, you've covered almost 6,000 square feet of that 21,000 square feet. So you covered almost a third just getting your house there. On a 1 acre lot, the ratio is a little bit different. You've covered 7,000 square feet of an available 43,000 square feet, so you're covering a lesser percentage because you have a larger lot, obviously. So the 2% restriction on that half acre lot means that you can put up accessory buildings totaling 436 square feet. So think about that for a minute. An 8 by 10 storage shed is 80 square feet. You could put 4 of those on that property under the current ordinance. You could put in one storage shed that's 10 by 40, which is a pretty large storage shed of sorts. On the 1 acre, you can have up to 872 square feet under the current ordinance. So we started looking at how far up is reasonable, and I just kind of went in 2% increments, and the number was thrown out just at one of the meetings of 20%, and I just tell you that 20% is like putting 4 additional houses on that lot. I don't think there's any way that works. So stepping it from 2% to 4% means that on that half acre lot, you're putting another half a house on it, 872 square feet. If you go up to 6%, you're almost putting a second house on that lot. So visually, if you think about it, think about your neighbor, and think about whether you would like to see a second house on that lot. And if that's acceptable to you, then 6% is that threshold. If that's going to cut too many trees, cut out too much green space, cause too much impervious cover, 4% is probably more reasonable, but it may be that you don't want to change it at all. And so I kind of talked you through a lot of numbers. At the end of the day, Dalton and I and members of the city council and other people in City Hall were talking, and he has some ideas of how you could structure that for whether or not it has a slab or not, whether or not it's going to impact drainage. And so there could be a threshold or a tiered system that if you're going to bring in a building that's going to sit above ground and not impact the impervious cover, up to a certain amount of square footage, you wouldn't even need a permit. You just would inform City Hall, you're done. If it triggers a slab or it triggers a certain threshold, maybe the 2% is appropriate, then you're in a permitting process. And at some point, it would trigger a variance process. And so what we would like is to get feedback from you. It doesn't have to be tonight, but it could be, you know how to get in touch with us, of whether you like the 2%, knowing the visual you have now, whether you would like us to look at the 4, or whether you want us to look at the 6, or some other number. And then I will codify that guidance, and in the next couple of weeks, when Mr. Rice is on board, assuming that the city council signs the bill on Tuesday, we hope he does, then he will have some guidance from you and can hit the ground running and know from our notes how to start structuring that new ordinance rewrite to bring it back to you at your next meeting.
I like the idea of slab, no slab.
I love it.
Yeah, because that definitely does make a difference on what you should be able to put out there and what you may have more restrictions on.
That was all Mr. Rice.
Well, and, just a caveat to add on to it, some of the concerns are drainage. Obviously, that's a huge thing that we want to worry about. The more slab you put, the more drainage issues you're going to have. Just, that's the bottom line. So how do we address those? The other side that's important too is we don't want to over-regulate something like that. We want to give people the ability to do what they want on their lot within a certain reason, and by having that tier system, you allow homeowners to be able to do the things that they want to do, while also putting those thresholds in there for those who may have a little bit more larger activities.
Or a unique lot, like we've seen. Morgan's Point is nothing if it's not unique. And the house styles and the way they sit on lots, one size does not fit all in this city. So we're very reluctant to bring you a one-size-fits-all solution.
I looked up some neighboring cities, what they have, and I didn't find any that has a percentage of the lot. They all deal somehow, except Toledo, Troy has it for the commercial buildings. They all deal with it with setback lines and things like that.
do something that up to a certain point allows property owners to exercise care over their property and what they want to do with it without involving the city. And then there's that middle portion that fits into a neatly defined envelope, and we don't have to deal with those except for the issue of permit. And then there's a process for those that it's just a unique situation, it doesn't fit, and those are the ones you have to come and talk to about. So I would recommend that you give us some feedback in the next couple of days and reach out to me, and then I'll share that with Dalton before he comes on board.
Sounds great. That sounds good. Goodbye. We're good. Thank you all for what you've done on that. I appreciate that feedback.
Oh, that's a big already. If somebody wants a special permit and that thing is already established, if it affects, this affects the neighbors, there has to be neighborhood input if somebody wants to do it. That this is in the tiered approach.
Yeah.
That there's really, neighborhood input.
Okay. All right, let's move on to item number 4, which is old business, which we have none scheduled for tonight. Item number 5 is Morgan's Point master plan update, which Andrea gave us all a set of copies. I'm sure we all read all of that, all during the holidays and everything else. I did read except for one. Well, I'm going to. It's on my list to keep going. But it's well done. The only thing, my question is, some of, when I go through there, I put a big question mark out the side or something and say, okay, do we need to talk about that a little bit
Yes, that's
more?
why I think what we really should do, I feel, first of all, we need more input,
Right.
and I really think we need to set a day where we can just talk about it instead of hear all everything's so formal.
I think we mentioned workshop.
Workshop.
Yeah, something, I
I mean, how does everybody's schedule look coming up into the next month when we get into February? I think it would be something we should do maybe right after February's council meeting. We'll do a workshop right after that, make this our own item on that particular.
Maybe during the day, not so
Right.
late.
Well, does everybody have any time constraints, work constraints during the day? No? Michael?
Just, Thursdays we
I mean, you throw in the day and you say, yes, we are available on the day.
Okay,
We can send you out a poll for when, what's the most convenient day for all of you
Sure.
together.
Yeah.
And mid-February sounds good because that would give Mr. Rice a chance to read
Right.
and digest and hopefully be able to participate in that to a point where he's familiar with the
That
documents.
sounds good. All right, well, we'll work forward to try to get that date established, get everybody something that's convenient and work forward with that. Anything else on the master plan update? Anybody wants to comment on that?
Thank you for the work.
Yes, thanks, Andrea. Item number 6 is agenda discussion. Anything that we need to add to our next agenda that we've not had on here that anybody like to bring up at this point? That will, I think that item number 3 will kind of stay there until we get that satisfied.
And then your next major item will be flat, probably, flat review.
That's true. That reviews will be coming. Okay. All right, I'm on to item number 7, which is, I need a motion for adjournment. Nobody wants to leave? All right, Nathan made it. Second.